Susan, who I first met when she visited my art studio with Dan Flaser from St. Louis around 1994 or something like that. Her son Greg, and they're with the Sea Monsters and the Sailing Ship St. Louis 1939 drawing. We are at the Mount Baker Neighborhood Center for the Arts. Here is Lily.
And I'm stealing your picture.
And anything you'd like to say for the YouTube masses about my artwork here?
You can call it a drawing, but it's a multimedia installation.
It's mixed media.
And why is it not for sale?
Well, that's more complicated.
Oh, okay.
But this is not part of my kind of mammoth Under the Wings.
Bye.
Nice meeting you.
Under the Wings art series, which is mainly about victims of the Holocaust, but also includes 3 works of victims of fascism, like in Croatia and or Italy.
So
this is like an independent work that's not part of that series. There's about 30 works I have that are not part of the Wings series that are Holocaust related and themed. And for educational purposes, I would hope to eventually either have it purchased for, or if I end up having to donate it to some collection, not a museum because I don't want it to go into storage, but it will be where it could be permanently displayed, for example, like a school. So Arbeit macht frei was the infamous signage at Auschwitz, as opposed to Birkenau, which was its neighboring camp at Auschwitz, and people would. Work makes free was part of the ruse and deception for our rivals.
I've heard that. I just haven't heard the.
Yeah.
Do you have the keys?
I do.
Let me watch this.
So, any other questions are always good. Questions.
So
Yes.
tell me, when did you start this particular piece, and what were you thinking when you did?
I started this. It was either November or December. I completed, I think, on January 9th. I had been giving thought to all the xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-immigrant fervor out of the Trump-Pence campaign and all that biz, as well as comparable things in Western Europe, Britain, Australia, other countries. And I wanted to do well, the Under the Wings works, I've said for many years, and I've done teaching with child audiences, kids, elementary school age, as well as teenagers, in schools and others, at exhibits and so on. I've said that those works, thanks, can be have been accessible. But I was thinking, I really want to do something that's really, really child-focused for tolerance education. That would that I could use like with presentations for elementary school kids. And I was thinking, how do I do that? And I don't remember how I got into the subject of the Sailing Ship St. Louis, but I checked out 2 books from the Seattle Public Library. One for children, a children's book author, and the other by an adult writer who's probably around our age. His parents were German Jewish refugees who made it to America before the war broke out. His father's brother was this man, born the same year as my mom. He was born in 1919. His name was Klaus Helmut Goldschmidt.
Same as my mom.
Oh, really? My mom was born in 1918 also. And so after the ship, this is a very nutshell synopsis of what happened to the ship. When it got to Havana, 1939, they let about 20 passengers into Cuba. The ship then went past Miami. The United States refused to let any passengers. Same thing with the Canadians when they went by Nova Scotia. Everyone disembarked in Antwerp. The British took a number of passengers. I forget how many. I think it was at least 100, maybe a couple hundred. All of whom survived World War II. All the others ended up in either France or Belgium, and a number of whom were murdered, including Klaus at Auschwitz in 1943. I have to write the Holocaust Museum in DC. I had read an article, the Holocaust Museum was going to, and I don't know if they've completed or not, research everyone was on the ship and what happened to each of them. So I don't know yet whether these 2 kids which I drew from like black and white photographs, seen in a porthole. Same thing with this girl here, whether they survived or didn't survive. So in doing I decided to put this Auschwitz image in a porthole, same thing with this like sea monster here. Now I've talked too much. I always like getting the audience to say things.
But I love it that,
Oh, that's
you know, and I know the story of the St. Louis. I wouldn't necessarily know that this yet.
So you do see what's going on here, right? What do you see there?
Is that a bomb exploded?
Or is that the sea monster?
That's a very good interpretation.
It is.
Your son's got it right. So these are teeth. It's like a six-eyed sea monster. 2 rows of teeth, like as if it's going to be like chomping down, almost like, remember the movie Jaws? Back in the 1970s, you never saw it.
I'm not a movie person. So.
Okay. Big hit back in the 1970s. Steven Spielberg directed it, I think. Maybe somebody else, I forget. Anyway, so that's the big sea monster. We've got this one here,
That one
this
there.
one here,
This
and this one
beautiful
here.
one.
It's kind of like a snake-like or serpent or something, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So, anything you'd like to say? I can take the questions about the art or observations, commentary.
I think the idea, the conceit of equating a disaster with a humanitarian disaster, self-created by humanity, with a monster is a good way of getting across, especially perhaps to young audiences, but to audiences of all ages, really, the fact that another way of thinking of tragedies. So.
That's very good. And in terms of my hopeful intent to use it as a teaching lesson in terms of like bigotry and intolerance. I've only had the opportunity to do that once so far, but I'm hoping now that this piece is framed to see if I can interest any local schools, for example, next winter, spring. I could do talks, bring it, and I gave a PowerPoint this past spring with an audience of kids ages 4 to 13 at the Nottingham Liberal Synagogue in England. And I showed this and asked them and this. I did another drawing after this and similarly sized called the Sea Beasties in the sailing ship St. Louis. And I asked them questions and I thought it went well as to how much actual tolerance, whatever they might have learned, we can only hope for the best.
And they're having more intolerance in England than we are here, I think.
No, I think it's probably about comparable. I mean, there's always been a great deal of prejudice against immigrants in Britain, especially from certain regions of the world. And they've always accepted like a lot of people from former colonies and stuff. But the kind of the Islamophobia that engulfs so many European countries, Britain, the United States, probably some in Canada and Australia, I know, is probably all really similar from my thinking in terms of, I don't know. I find it particularly incongruous in the States here because of our what I call a genocidal gun slaughter, which is totally not only excused, but it's legislatively enabled and justified by the same people who rant about Islamic extremism. So, anyway, that's an editorial opinion on my part, which would surely have a lot of detractors among NRA member types and so on. Anyway, thank you both very much.
Pleasure.
Say adieu also.